All right. This is a conversation between a spiritualist and a Christian. My Christian friend here, John, who's going to introduce himself now.
How you doing? I am a Christian, and basically what that means for me is following the message that Jesus Christ brought. I do, however, believe a little different than most mainstream Christians do, which is them worshiping Jesus and not God. Also thinking that Jesus is God. I don't think that Jesus is God. I think that Jesus is the Son of God, which would make him my brother. Also, basically, in saying that he walks beside me, he doesn't walk behind me, nor does he walk in front of me. We are equal. He brought a message, and the message was of love and truth. Um, Again, I believe in God, a higher being, if you will, and I believe in basically the message that Jesus Christ brought.
Okay. My name is Jarrett. Excuse me. My name is Jarrett. I guess I would call myself a spiritualist. It's a pretty broad term, but it covers a lot of information. I started out life with basically a Christian background. I wasn't forced to go to church when I was younger, but when I was in fourth or fifth grade, I had a year in Catholic school, which kind of stimulated interest in religion, God, what it was all about. And in my early adulthood, I'd say my 30s, I spent a lot of time going from church to church, denomination to denomination, and throughout the states that I've lived in. And eventually ended up leaving Christianity because of some things that I encountered with Christianity that I didn't resonate with. One is when I went to the Catholic school, I was told that I wasn't worthy of talking to God. The other is when I went to Christianity, the one thing that I noticed is that there was a failure to talk about and emphasize the relationship with God. It would be mentioned under some people's breath, but nobody really emphasized it. It seemed like the Bible, the religion, came before God. So I ended up leaving, prioritizing God. That is the foundation of my beliefs, is putting God before everything, going directly to source for my information via prayer. I also explore information that's outside the confines of mainstream Christianity, such as gospels that were removed by councils of Nicaea, the Gospel of Thomas, the secret Gospel of John, or the Book of Enoch. Not to mention the fact that I have also explored other aspects of spirituality and other religions and found a lot of common core values. Now, with that said, I think we're going to start off with like a question and answer, a little bit of Q&A here. So let me start off by asking you a question, John. What inspired you to want to have this conversation?
I believe that God basically puts people and obstacles in front of you to not basically get through them, but to understand them. And in meeting you, you had a very um, interesting way of looking at God that nobody else really has. And when I come across individuals like that, I don't stray from them. I actually go to them. I go into the storm, if you will. And in seeing that, I have not met other folks like me that believe in Christianity such as I do. In fact, you're probably the only other individual that I've come across that believes in that believes close to what I believe.
Mm-hmm.
We do have oppositions, but that's neither here or there. Oppositions and disagreements are what they are. They shouldn't be taken to a serious level where human beings completely cut each other off.
I have to say, I think that's a very beautiful thing. I wish that more religions, more Christians, Jews, Muslims were like that, would focus on what we have in common instead of what's different. That's one of my other big issues with mainstream religion is how divisive it is.
I agree. I agree. I always say that another reason why I wanted to have this conversation is also because I don't believe that God has anything to do with religion.
I agree.
So in that sense, that's another reason, to answer your question, that's another reason why I wanted to have the conversation with you, have this conversation with you about Christianity and about just God in general. Um, like I said, the messenger, he brought his message um, to basically bring us to God and have us follow the best righteous path that one can basically have. And in saying that, basically, um, I do believe in some sense that you don't have control over pretty much everything. Um, I still do try to keep control of some things. It's in me because I lived a structured life. I had to live a structured life because of past events that I've gone through and things that I've gone through has made me basically the person I am and living a structured life and doing what I got to do. But in that sense, to answer your question that you asked in the first place, is the reason why I wanted to have this conversation is because, like I said, that you're the closest person that I've come across that has the same theory that I have, with little differences here and there.
Let me ask you, how would you say that trauma has influenced your spiritual life?
It's influenced it in a good and a bad way. It's influenced it in a bad way as far as overreaction. Overreacting to certain situations has got me. It's like being in water and being in like the middle of the ocean and a storm is taking place, and you're reacting to the storm in the water. I feel that the more you fight the current, the faster you'll sink. The less you fight the current and you let the water do what it's got to do, it'll more than likely, if not, it's fine. That's what it was set out to do: is drown you or pull you to shore. Whichever one it may be, it may be. But I feel like reacting to situations or overreacting to situations is exactly like that. You're in the middle of the ocean. There's a storm going on. You're fighting against the current. The more you fight, the faster you will sink. And that's what I feel that all my trauma has done. It has taught me not to fight against anything or anyone.
That's great. Do you have any questions you'd like to ask at this point?
I do. A spiritualist. When we first basically came in contact with each other, you said you were a spiritualist. What does that mean?
For me personally, it means that I don't conform to any one set system of belief. I guess you could say I customize my belief as I go through my walk with God. I allow God to be my guide. I follow the Christ-like path to the best of my ability. And when I say Christ-like path, I don't mean just the Christ-like path as pointed out in mainstream Christianity. I mean also the additional teachings that he taught in, say, the Gospel of Thomas from the Gnostic faith. In that, he emphasizes that we are all God. We're all part of God. We're all connected. And therefore, it's important to love and honor yourself, because by doing so, you're honoring God. When you can love yourself to your greatest ability, only then can you equally love everybody else, including God.
And so, another question I might have on following that: what do you think of Jesus Christ in his role?
I think Jesus was, like you, I think he was a guide, a teacher. I don't think he wanted to be worshipped. It's even been said that I don't quote verses. That's not something I don't like to Bible bash. So I never bothered to memorize verses. But I do know in the Bible that he made a point not to be worshipped. I know that there was a time when someone fell to their knees in front of them, and he knelt down and pulled them up and asked them not to worship him. Or there were times when they wanted to credit him with miracles, and he would purposefully say, "No, not me." God. I think he lived an example. And I think it's important for us to see by the way he lived, the true way he lived, not the narrative that's been told by religion because they want to control the narrative themselves, but the truth of it. And only to get to the truth of that, the only way to get to the truth of that is to look at the bigger picture.
And spiritualist, basically, when you say spiritualist, do you think that spiritualist is then pointing towards other things to open you up as far as other belief systems other than God, such as the adversary, if you will, the devil, angels, if you will, other entities that people have been spoken of and whatnot?
Well, one thing I found is that if you can step outside Christianity and don't look at that as the absolute literal truth, and if the earth is 6,000 years old, things like that, you realize the earth is much older, and then God is so much older than that. Do you think that God only first appeared 2,000 years or 6,000 years ago with the Jews? No. God's been around a lot longer than that. And he's been viewed many times through many different cultural lenses throughout history. He's had many different names, many different personas. Some of these have been demonized by the church.
Such as what?
I'll talk about an aspect of God. The archangels are aspects of God. They are archetypes. They are representative of good aspects of human nature. Lucifer is one. Lucifer, if you research Lucifer, he represents the same things that Jesus does. And yet the church demonized Lucifer. Why? Because Lucifer represented knowledge. He represented independence. These things are dangerous to the church. It's not profitable to have a congregation that's independent and realizes that they don't need a church as an intermediary to God, that they can go directly to God themselves.
So what do you think of again, I don't like bashing the Bible either, but you hear certain things that come out of the Bible and just hit in the heart, bring truth, if you will. And there's a verse that this popped in my head when you were talking. Of myself I can do nothing, and of myself I know nothing. What do you think about that verse?
And of myself I think that is basically saying that I can't do it without God in my life.
That is a great answer to that question.
No man is an island. You've heard that saying many a times.
Yes.
And usually I've heard that in reference to you needing other people, but I don't believe that's what it really is. I believe that means that you need God.
So, in saying that, how would you say, in order to reach your full potential on this rock, as a spiritualist or as a Christian or whatever label you want to slap on it, how would you tell someone to go about that?
Well, if I were to really simplify it in its most simple terms, I would say to fill your life and your soul with love. God is love. At its highest frequency, I guess you could say. Light, pure light. See, in this matrix that we live in, this is a fear-based matrix, which is the polar opposite of love. We have what Carl Jung called our shadow self, which is responsible for it is the mask that we wear to the world that hides the things that we don't want to show. Our defensive aspects, for example, the anger, the fear, the things that we really do fear, that we really do feel that we don't want to show other people, but have a healthy purpose when you're not living out of those aspects, when you're not constantly reacting out of them. Fear can save your life in a dangerous situation. Anger can help you to reinforce personal boundaries with other people. However, if you constantly live in fear and you're constantly reacting out of it, and you're not reacting out of love, well, that's when you start to see evil. So it's important to note here when we go through this conversation, darkness does not mean evil. Evil can be found in darkness, but darkness is not in and of itself evil. Your shadow isn't evil. The anger in you isn't evil. Would you say it's evil?
Yes, I would say it's evil. Um, but in saying that, what I've learned to do with evil is not react to it. I see it, I acknowledge it's there, just kind of like you acknowledge that evil people exist
Hmm.
and evil exist in this world.
Well, let me ask you, what do you define as evil?
Uh, Evil is um, the opposite of good.
I define it as the express intent to go against love, to try to destroy love, to try to hurt, to try to cause pain. It's intention that is evil.
Okay.
So anger, if somebody is, say, coming to your apartment every day and they're trying to talk their way into letting you into their apartment and you don't want them to do that and they won't take no for an answer and they keep bugging you every day and you're calm and you're mellow about it, you keep turning the other cheek and they just don't give up, and one day you get angry and you finally just tell them forcefully no. Now, I'm not saying you get aggressive and you become offensive about it, but you simply establish your boundary. That's a shadow aspect of yourself. Would you say that's evil?
No, I would say that's discernment.
You use discernment in how you use it, yes.
Yes. So I would say basically when you have to get stuff done, you do not use anger. You use basically discernment in doing so. You stay calm, you stay collective, you notice the situation for what it is, and you're able to respond to it in an efficient manner.
See, I view discernment as the process of selecting the tool to use in the situation,
Right.
not the tool itself. Anger is just the tool in this situation.
See, I feel that anger is an emotion, and in doing so, it's one of the strongest emotions, if you will. And in doing so, in using anger, it can overwhelm you and take control of you to a point where you're not going to be able to control it. It is then controlling your vessel completely in the situation in the present moment. Therefore, the outcome and what you do is not going to be of you, and nor is it going to work out for you.
One thing I've learned in my own experiences is that the more I come to accept that I have an ego or a shadow side, and the more I work with it, and the more I work toward the light and integrate that love in my life, the more peace with that shadow, the more I realize it's not my enemy working against me. Once upon a time, when I didn't have that love in my life, yes, when I was completely residing, yes, absolutely it would take me over. I could do horrible things to people, horrible things to things. I mean, I could be a bad person. However, when you are living out of love, you're still going to experience those emotions from time to time. You'll never, ever be divorced of those. So the best you can do is to make peace with them and realize that they do have a place and purpose.
Mm.
And to let them have their place and purpose when the time comes.
Mm.
And honor that.
Mm. So you feel that reacting to it in a way of acknowledgement.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel in non-reacting,
Mm-hmm.
basically not reacting to it at all.
How shall we say? Shall we say, instead of reacting, we respond. That's where you use your discernment. You stop and you think, how do I want to address this situation? Reaction is a knee-jerk thing.
Right.
That's where you run into problems because you're not thinking things through.
Right.
So when you respond, you're using that discernment that you talk about. And you can use these things that might ordinarily cause you trouble for good things.
I also think that when you're reacting to a situation, knowing basically that nothing, and also knowing before that nothing can and nothing will ever hurt you because you are protected by the Most High.
Mm-hmm.
And in knowing that and thinking that, you're not going to react, or you're just going to non-react in a way where you're always going to have success in whatever situation you're faced with.
Yes, you will always have success, depending on how you define the success. Bad things can still, and unfortunate things can still happen in this life. There's a lot of chaos in this world.
Oh yes.
So you can be divinely protected to the point where God is literally right in front of you, protecting you the whole way, but that does not stop the free will of others to try to interfere and throw things in your path.
Let me ask you a question. Most Christians believe that there's God and then there's Lucifer. Lucifer, known as basically, I believe, the shining star.
Mm-hmm. Morning star.
Morning star.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, morning star. Known as the morning star. He goes by several different names.
Did you know Jesus is also known as that?
I did not know that.
Mm-hmm. He's also known as the morning star.
In knowing that, though, knowing that most Christians and just most mainstream religion, Mormons, I believe, Catholics, so on and so forth, they all believe that there's God, and then this world, and this world is ruled by Lucifer.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe that this world is ruled by Lucifer?
No. That is the mainstream traditional Christian version of things. However, if you look at the version of Christianity that predates the stuff that was taken from the Gospels that were removed, you hear a different narrative. The original one states, first of all, the Bible doesn't actually mention Lucifer, by the way. He's not in the Bible.
Okay.
There are a lot of things about the Bible that were never even in the original Bible, that were just kind of invented as the millennia passed to fit the narrative of the church. But that's neither here nor there. I'm not saying that to incense people. That's just things that I've discovered through my own research. But in the Gnostic faith, as I understand it, and please take in mind, I'm not an expert on this. I have done research, and I'll speak on what I think, what I believe I know. Someone watching this may think, well, you may be wrong on that. That's fine. I have no problem being wrong.
Right.
My purpose here is to have a conversation and get people talking.
Right.
So, the narrative is that the universe as we know it was created by a being known as an eon. Okay? This is a being that is, if you look at things in the scale of high to low, God being the highest, and let's say animals were the lowest, they're right below God. Then you got like cherubim, seraphim, whatever, and then you got archangels, angels, and there's so many other types of beings out there that Christianity doesn't even know about. There's a whole universe of beings out there. So these eons, one of them named Sophia, created the universe. She did this in an imbalanced way. She did this with a little bit of ego in mind. She did a little bit of ego, a little bit of creativity. She wanted to be different. She created this universe without the male half of the energy. There is duality in this reality. Light, dark, up, down, male, female, right, wrong. Well, she tried to create only with the female, which through a really lengthy story I could explain how that ended up leading to a toxically masculine society, patriarchal society that we have nowadays. It was supposed to be balanced. And in times past, there were times, like in ancient Egyptian times, where it was balanced, where the feminine was just as honored as the masculine. So in the process of creating this universe, in the Gnostic faith, she created a being called Yaldabaoth. You could say he's like her son, I guess you could say. He was created in a very damaged way. So they say he's got the power of what the Old Testament considers to be God. He has the power of creating the earth. He has the power of creating human vessels. What he doesn't have is the ability to put the divine spark of life into them. So he's very powerful, but he's also ignorant. He's completely unaware that he's not the only deity in existence, and that there is Source, and that there's Sophia, and there's others. So that's where you get in the Old Testament that I am a jealous God. I am the only God. Because that's what Yaldabaoth really believes. And he has these fallen angels, you could say demons, called archons that serve him. They're also archetypes. They're representative of the shadow nature of human behavior. Just as archangels are representative of the light aspect of human behavior. It goes on. The story is kind of a lengthy one. I don't know if I answered your question yet, because in talking about this, I kind of forgot what your question was.
I asked basically, does the devil rule the world?
In that sense, yes.
Okay.
He created the world as it is so that humans would not remember who they are, that they are a part of God, that they are divine. and ultimately more powerful than he is.
Okay.
He created this, to use like scientific or cinematic terms, if you've seen the movie The Matrix,
Yes.
this is a matrix, and it's based on fear.
Hmm. Okay.
In creating this universe in a one-sided, lopsided way like it was created with only the feminine energy, and with the masculine energy toxically taking over and suppressing the feminine, the reason that happened is Yaldabaoth knew that if the feminine were honored, then humans would be able to find their way out of this matrix. And the reason for that is the feminine aspect of human nature is responsible for intuition, just as the male aspect is responsible for intellect. Intuition is what allows you to see what is not right in front of your eyes.
Hmm.
It allows you to see outside of this matrix.
Hmm.
Logic keeps you restricted to it.
Hmm. So, upon saying that, I believe that God, from what Christians have taught, being a jealous God, I don't believe that. I believe that He doesn't care whether you suffer or whether you follow Him. That's my belief from mainstream Christianity. Also, upon that, what you're saying with, I believe that intellect and what else? What else did you say?
Intuition.
Intuition. Intellect and intuition are actually vice versa, in my opinion. Women have intellect and men have intuition.
That's the way it seems nowadays because of toxic masculinity in this patriarchal society taking over everything. Females are trying to be males. You got this war between the two genders,
Right.
and women are trying to prove that I can do it without a man.
Right.
So they take on that masculine energy.
Interesting. In saying too, though, that the devil rules this world, could that be God's basically structure, if you will, or creation, or letting him do so, so we are to overcome him and also overcome this world, so we then can reach God. And in saying that, like I said, I don't think God cares for us to follow him or not follow him. He gives us the will to follow him or not follow him. Mm-hmm. He does not care whether we follow him, whether we suffer or we don't suffer. But basically, we choose on our own to follow him or to follow the flesh and follow worldly pleasures.
I agree with you. I would phrase it a little differently. It is agreement, though. It's not that God doesn't care about us. I would say he doesn't care as much about these physical bodies. Because these are just made for the experience of being human. He cares about our souls. Because that's our eternal body. That's what never ends.
Okay.
These bodies, these physical bodies, can do whatever they want. They can worship Satan. They can be a Luciferian. They can be a Christian. It doesn't matter. Okay. You're here to have an earthly experience however you choose to do so. What matters is that you don't try to willingly oppose his will. Okay. And his will is ultimately love.
In saying that, I like to work out. I like to exercise, and take care of myself. Try to eat properly. Have a hamburger every now and then. Yeah. Everybody should have a hamburger.
Oh, you got every cheat days.
Yeah, definitely. In saying so, it says in the Bible to respect the temple, and the temple being the vessel. Do you think we should try to take care of the temple? Absolutely.
Okay. Look, coming from someone who's overcome addiction, trauma, mental illness, physical debilities, I've learned in the process of trying to make myself the best person I can be, you have to approach all angles of yourself. Okay. You have to approach the emotional, the physical, the spiritual, the mental, psychological. Yeah. Basically, there's like 5 aspects of yourself that you got to work on. So you want to be healthy mentally, physically. So you want to eat right, you want to exercise, you want to make sure you get the right amount of sleep, make sure you're hydrating. Absolutely. In also saying that, going kind of off onto another topic about masculinity and femininity,
I believe that God has a masculine spirit and the devil has a feminine spirit. What do you have to say about that?
I've come to believe that s- I'm going to use the word source, the
Okay.
source of all that is, the ultimate highest power there is.
Okay.
God is a Christian word. I think that God is actually relatively limited compared to what source is.
Okay.
Source is neither and both at the same time. Gender in the highest realms of existence, like God's realm of existence, is as representative of what a being is up there as a tire is to a car.
Hmm.
You see a tire and you know it belongs to a car, but that doesn't tell you what kind of car it is, how fast it is, whether it's a gas engine, electric engine, AC, new, old. It doesn't tell you much, does it?
No.
Neither does your gender. And yet it is true. There is gender there. It's only a small part of a much larger idea.
Okay.
So God is both. But I believe that just as we are we're little splinters of God or little fractals of God or of Source, so are all of his creations. And I think he fractalized himself on a scale. This is the best three-dimensional way of looking at it. You have the top of the scale where there's Source. And then you got beings that he created directly after he decided to create. He supposedly in the Gnostic faith, Barbelo, the Eon Barbelo, who is like the divine mother of all of existence. That was his first thought.
Hmm.
She's representative. She's almost, you could almost say she's almost like the voice of God, the voice of Source.
Okay.
She, in turn, created other beings beneath her, which were representative of fractalized versions of what she was representative of.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Um, that makes sense the way that you just explained it. Yes. Um, in doing so, do you have? I understand what you just said. Do you have a simpler? So you're saying basically to break it down into layman's terms, is saying that God is both feminine and masculine energy
And more.
and more.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Interesting. Um, in also in saying that, what do you feel human beings' role is on this earth?
It's not just one role. I've heard things throughout my lifetime that, like, Earth is a test, life is a test, it's a school. I've also heard it put into the analogy of being a movie. I myself have in my mind like that of a video game. It is a school, it is a test, it is a movie, it's all those things and more.
Okay.
Okay, it's an experience to be enjoyed, but it's also an experience to learn from. It's also, if you look at things in terms of like dimensions or energetic density, the reason we have physicality is because energy frequencies is so dense here that there is physicality. But as you get up higher into the realms, the energy densities decrease and everything becomes less physical. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense.
That makes this the most difficult realm in all of existence for a spirit to traverse to, because our spirits, our souls, are not physical.
Hmm.
There's also a little thing called karma. Religion talks about sin. Sin is a fear-based word. It's part of the fear matrix to keep people in fear so they don't question. I like to think of things as being done through karma, which I guess you could say is like spiritual credit. So anytime, for example, you wish someone ill or you do something bad to something or do something bad to someone, you're accumulating karma, which is being kept on record in the spiritual realms and will never go away. And you'll never ever be able to get off without paying it. This is the realm where we pay that karma.
Hmm.
The traumas that we heal, that we go through, is paying off that karma. Dharma, which is the opposite of karma, which is like good karma. That's what we get when we do good things for people. That pays off karma.
Most Christianity, most Christians, or any mainstream religion, in hearing you speak, would say that it sounds like black magic
Mhm.
or dark entities or just something of an evil entity. in saying what you're saying with basically looking at the ego side and embracing basically, if I may use that word, embracing emotions like anger and so on and so forth. What would you have to say to that?
Can you simplify the question?
So most Christians, or me for example, I would say in embracing anger or any other emotion would be seen as evil. Yeah.
I don't see much of anything as evil. There is evil, but I think there is a spectrum, okay? At the top of the spectrum, you got the purest light. At the bottom of the spectrum, you got the darkest dark. Everything else in between is shades of gray. Okay? That's why you have divine beings who are serving God who work in the shadow realms. They're not evil because they're in the shadow. It's just they have duties that need to be taken care of down there.
Okay.
Like the underworld. Attending to the dead. Evil, like I said, is intention to work against God's... Best way I can say it is God's love. God doesn't himself really have much of a plan here on earth because that would be going against our free will. He wants us to live the experiences we want to live. But there are people who actively go out of their way to try to hurt, destroy, ruin people that are trying to live their best life for love and for God.
Fascinating.
Those are the people, when they reject God's light, completely reject it to the point where there is no more light left in them. They are themselves 100% pure dark. That's where you find evil. But there are people who do bad things that aren't necessarily evil. Their prisons are filled with people like that.
So, I'm going to turn the conversation around right now. I feel like I've been asking all the questions, and you have not got to ask me any questions. So I would like at this point to ask you if you have any more questions you would like to ask.
Been too busy talking to think of a question, to be honest with you.
Okay. As far as basically my belief in Christianity, or where my stance is on Christianity, or in any of basically God, Jesus, this world, just anything.
What would you like? I know you and I are not really swayed by other people's opinions. But for those watching this video, what would you like people to pull away from this? What message would you like people to take away from this?
Individuality. Having your own thought process when it comes to spirituality, if you was to say, or God, Jesus. Being able to think for yourself, not lumping yourself in with a crowd, going to the beat of your own drum, and questioning things when things are said. Don't just become part of this modern time of tribalism. When I say tribalism, I mean everything. I mean it from race to certain genres of music, from certain ways of living, culture. I think all those are constructs, and that those need to be broken, and they're not based in reality. And you should basically be based in reality and be grounded and have a mind of your own. Don't be a follower. Be your own man, be your own woman, and basically live for yourself. And if anybody has an issue with that, let them have an issue with it. That's their issue, not your issue.
I agree.
Yes. And that's what I have to say upon that. If there's no more questions from your side, I think I'm all out of questions.
Okay.
With this conversation, with this video itself.
Okay.
And I hope everybody that's watching and listening got something out of this, and basically either brightened up their day or made them think more in depth as far as everything goes in general. And do you have anything else that you want to say?
I just want to say thank you for this conversation. This is a good conversation.
Yes, it is.
And I think that this helps to emphasize one of my biggest points in life,
Yes.
is that everybody's path is unique.
Yes. And for all those listening and watching, also, when you come across somebody that may, whatever label you slap on yourself or the world slaps on you, Christian, Mormon, Muslim, spiritualist, listen to what they have to say. Satanist, listen to what they have to say. You'd be surprised what you can learn from an opposing force or someone that you just think has a different opinion. It could advance you in life, and however it advances you. You never know. God didn't put you here to basically make you follow one thing. He put you here because he has bigger plans for you and wants you to basically be open and experience this full world for what it is.
In my journey, I found that God wants one thing above all. He wants your love. He doesn't want your worship. You know, there's a saying that the meek shall inherit the earth. Too many people I see mistake the word meek for weak. God doesn't want an unquestioning, simpering wimp on his knees. God wants someone who's going to step forward boldly and ask questions and discover and learn who they truly are. And most importantly, of their own free will, come to him with an open heart.
I think that's a good way to end this conversation, because myself, I asked someone a couple of days ago, I believe it was a Mormon that I came across. They used a verse from the Bible to read me something. I love the Mormons. And I asked them to read me a verse, and they read me a verse, and it had that word meek in it. And if you don't mind, Jared, I would like to read the definition of that word.
Sure.
So, according to Google, meek means quiet, gentle, and easily impressed, submissive. I used to call her Miss Mouse because she was so meek and mild.
Mm.
Now, in saying that, I think that what you just said is an opposing force to this, basically, because of what you just said. This does not basically have a good definition for meek.
Yeah, I see an extended definition that definitely contradicts what I say at face value.
Right. Yes.
And on that, I would just have to ponder it a little bit farther.
Right.
To be honest.
In saying that, I don't believe that meek means that either, of what I just read. I believe that meek means basically humbled, willing to basically understand and possibly, because understanding brings progression.
I think when I use the word meek, I go by the context under which I grew up hearing it used repetitively in organized religion.
Okay.
There are many words as I get older. I find that if I don't go back frequently and look up the definitions, the only way I remember the usage is via text or context. Right. And that is the case in this instance.
Right. And I've found over the years too, when looking up definitions, that I'm looking at the definition and I'm like, that's not what it said when I was in school.
Mm.
And I graduated some years back, so like 20 years ago, 2 decades almost, basically. So you could say that definitions I've literally seen in my life, and I'm pretty sure Jared has seen in his life, definitions change.
Oh, yeah.
Given the agenda of the modern times.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who disagrees or agrees with me on that, but definitions will change. All kinds of stuff will change according to basically direct the masses in the way that they want them to go.
You know, naturally, language naturally evolves, especially when you got a nation filled with many cultures.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I think we're going to end the conversation here. Thank you for tuning in and watching. And John, or Dave, I keep wanting to call you John. You look like someone I used to know named John.
That's fine.
Dave, thank you for having this conversation with me, brother. Jared. I love you, man.
I love you too.
All right. Peace out, guys.